Welcome to 3Pillars, a tool to help you assess sustainability return on investment, or S-ROI. This tutorial will walk you through the use of 3Pillars and assumes you have a basic understanding of S-ROI already. To use 3Pillars, first go to the URL shown on the screen and log in using the username and password that you signed in with. If you don't have one yet and are just trying 3Pillars, click on Trial Account Sign Up. You'll come to the 3Pillars dashboard. The dashboard shows all the projects that you've made and shows the results for the most recent project. Trial accounts will have example project Southern Kyushu. Purchased accounts will also have the project template project. Select the Southern Kyushu project to see what's been entered. Next, select Project Setup. Here you'll see a section for the goal and scope, which can also hold a description of the project. There's a section for project participants. Eventually, you'll be able to use this area to connect project members to the project. Next, you'll see the year of project start and the year of last cost. This spread should encompass all time periods that you may wish to analyze. The period shown here, 2011 through 2042, allows the project team to analyze a 10, 20, or 30-year time horizon. Next, we have the alternatives. These are the options that you will be choosing between. 3Pillars calculates the difference between each alternative and the base case. Most users select their current practice, or business as usual, as the base case. Since 3Pillars always shows the first alternative entered in the dashboard, I always put the alternatives that we're most interested in at the top. You can click on the last line to add more alternatives. Note the discussion board on the right. All users, both managers and viewers, can enter information into the discussion board. Only managers can enter or change data in the left of the screen. Now let's click on the Traditional Cost tab to see the traditional return on investment information. Here we have the opportunity to enter direct and overhead costs associated with the project along with expected revenues. These are your type 1 and 2 costs in S-ROI. Each entry, called a cost for simplicity, can be either a cost or benefit. That way everything gets entered as positive numbers and 3Pillars keeps track of the signs for us. We can include a description, which tracks the detail that may be too much for the graphs. Here you'll see operational costs which are not capitalized. 3Pillars allows us to associate the cost with one or more of the alternatives. If the cost is associated with more than one alternative, clicking the link icon links the costs so that they will be treated the same for each alternative during the Monte Carlo analysis. Each cost or benefit can be a single number or have a distribution. Well understood costs that don't change much may be modeled with no uncertainty, as the labor is here. Ranges can be modeled using a uniform distribution. If there's a most likely value that may go up or down, for an equipment purchase for example, a triangular or normal distribution works well. Log normal and beta distributions work well for energy costs that are bounded by 0 at the lower end. For more information on the distributions, click on Help and select the distribution table. Once you've entered the information for the first year that a cost will occur, you can click the Copy button to copy it to the next year. Scroll up or down to the bioethanol plant construction. When we click on this cost, we see that it is identified as a capital purchase. You have the option of selecting straight line or double declining depreciation over any number of years. If you don't know what depreciation to use, check with your finance department. You can also include a salvage value if appropriate. Each cost has its own discussion board, allowing independent discussion about any of these costs. Next, let's select the Scenarios tab to see how risks and opportunities are modeled. Each risk or opportunity is associated with one or more alternatives. As before, the probability may be linked. Each risk or opportunity gets a probability or range of probabilities assigned by year. Since scenarios can be dependent upon one another, we have the option to make a scenario a sub-scenario of another one. In this case, there's a probability that there will be an explosion. There's a much smaller probability that the explosion will destroy the building. Making one a sub-scenario of the other ties them together so you can't have the building destroyed if there is no explosion. Once again, there's the option of using the discussion board in each scenario. Next, click on the Scenario Costs tab. Like before, we can associate either costs or benefits to a scenario. We call them costs for simplicity. Scenario costs are the S-ROI type 3, 4, and 5 costs. We can enter them in the same way that we enter traditional costs using distributions, depreciation, etc. as needed, as well as use the discussion board. Costs can also be added to one or more scenarios, and the costs can be linked. Since the amount of these costs may change over time, we have the option to change the costs based on when the scenario occurs. By checking this option, the drop-down becomes a selector switch for the year. Some costs may linger over time. If an event occurs that causes poor morale, for example, it can take 2 or 3 years to build back employee trust. 3Pillars allows us to enter costs that occur in the years after the scenario occurs. All we have to do is click Add Another Year. Let's click on the Analysis tab to see what results look like. You'll see that you can enter a discount rate, the time value of money, time horizon, tax rate, and whether to analyze before or after taxes. If you're not sure what to use here, your finance department can probably help. Let's click the Analyze button and see what we get. The most important tab is the last one, Net Present Value with respect to baseline by options. This tab shows the net present value, or NPV, with respect to the alternative selected as the baseline. The alternative selector switch allows you to flip through the alternatives you've set up. When we select Build the Ethanol Plant, we see the NPV calculated through the year on the x-axis. The blue line is the worst-case scenario, or what happens if everything goes wrong. The red line is the best case, or what happens if everything goes the best that it can. The graphs in 3Pillars are still very simple. However, you can click on the Data Table tab and then click Save as Excel in the bottom right. This allows you to use any of the plotting functionality in Excel. The other results are useful for debugging the model and for determining which costs or benefits are playing the largest role in the result. Feel free to explore these. Remember that you can't mess anything up from the Analyze tab. The reporting feature is not complete at this time, but eventually will allow you to quickly pull any of the text you entered along with the analysis results into a Word document. Now let's look at the template within 3Pillars. The template is a kind of a guide to the types of costs and scenarios that might apply in an S-ROI and is supplied to paying customers of 3Pillars. Click back on the project setup. Click on the project template to the right to select it. To use the project template, make a copy of it by clicking the Copy button. Give it a name. You'll see that there's some generic information in the template. Put your own information in its place. Modify the year of project start and the year of last cost as needed. Click on the Traditional Costs tab. On the right-hand side, you'll see a series of costs and cost types that might apply to your project. These are there for a guide. Modify them as needed for your project. If a cost is not appropriate for your project, delete it by selecting the trash can next to the cost. Feel free to add more costs if more than one fits in a category, or if you have costs that don't fit into any category. Select whether it's a cost or benefit, a capital purchase, and which alternatives it applies to. Add your costs and move on to the next. Next, let's look at scenarios. Here you'll see our lists of risks and opportunities that might affect your project. The description contains questions that can help you assess the alternatives and the decision. In some cases, we've found literature research that relates to the probability of a scenario that may be helpful. If you think there is really an opportunity as opposed to a cost, don't hesitate to turn the question around and create a positive scenario. You can attach any scenario to any alternative or to more than one. Assign probabilities or probability ranges for the years that the scenario may occur. Remember that you can use the sub-scenario feature and add new scenarios as needed. Attach the scenario with the appropriate alternatives and delete any unused scenarios. Now let's check out the scenario costs. Here you'll find a long list of contingent liabilities and intangible costs. Find any that seem appropriate to your situation. You'll find a brief description that may be helpful and literature values for each cost. The literature is referenced here and in the associated document which you will have received when you purchase 3Pillars. This allows you to explore the literature to see if the quoted cost seems appropriate for your situation. Many users will use the range between the lowest and highest value, or a range from 0 to one of the literature values. Use the description and discussion board to document why you've chosen the values that you did. Feel free to add more costs and be sure to delete unused ones. It's always a good idea to go back through all your costs to be sure that you've indicated which are benefits and which are capital purchases, and that they are associated with the correct alternative or scenario. This concludes the 3Pillars tutorial. If you have any questions, please contact us at support@earthshift.com or by calling 802-434-3326 extension 2.